Okay, everybody, welcome to July 30th, 2024 podcast, or as I've liked to start referring to it, it's day 9 of the new earth. Okay, day 9 of the new earth when after Joe Biden did one of the most patriotic things you'll ever see from a political leader and stepped aside to allow Vice President Harris to move into the spot as the presumptive nominee for the Democrats. And today I'm joined by a couple folks who are a big part of the Common Power community. So I'm going to make sure we're all pinned on here. I'm joined by Jen Meeker, who has been part of Common Power for some time and in a variety of capacities. And I'm joined by Sharnita Wiggins-Winder, who is been part of Common Power for about a little over a year now. And both of them are just they bring joy. They bring joy and energy to the organization. We love working with you both. And I asked you both to come onto this podcast because I want to talk about what is a big day in the Common Power kind of journey. Is that yesterday the Seattle Times ran a big front page story about Common Power and more generally about voters canvassing for presidential candidates and for candidates in the political space. And we just want to talk a bit about that article and also celebrate it because it's not every day you get a big story. So here it is, folks. Here's the big front page. That's called a newspaper for any of my millennial friends out there. And there is an online version of this too. And when I send out the link here, when I send out the podcast, I'll share the link. Sharnita and Jen, have you seen this?
Yes.
Yes.
And at the recommendation of one of my friends, I actually thought at 9 o'clock last night, maybe I should get a paper copy of it. I have not owned a paper newspaper in probably 15 years.
Yeah, same way. I'm having them shipped, a couple of them shipped to me, so I'm excited.
Oh, that's great. So this is the front page for July 29th. And then that's like big enough. We got like 2/3 of the front page. And then on the inside, pages 6 and 7, we got 2 full pages here. This is amazing. And right over here is Sharnita, okay, in this red outfit right there. And she's talking to a voter, and we're going to talk about that experience because that voter looks pretty skeptical. All right. And then on the front page is Jen Meeker right here. All right. And Jen's also down here. Your hat gives you away, Jen, right here.
It was hot.
Yes, really hot.
Really hot.
So the article is written by a reporter by the name of Daniel Beekman, and they sent Beekman. Mr. Beekman has spent a number of times interviewing us, Charles Douglas, executive director. I talked to him. He talked to us staff, and done a number of kind of like experiences with us in the Seattle area. And then they went on this trip with Team Nevada to the Las Vegas area, and that's where those photos are from. And so Jen and Sharnita, you are both there, and you're 2 great unique stories about how you got involved in Common Power, and I want to get to a little bit of that. But let's just start from kind of the fact that you're in Nevada and you're canvassing, you're knocking doors for people, and it's like hot. Like how hot was it? Okay.
Ooh, it was triple digits,
Okay.
and it was the kind of, I'm from Florida, so we get 90s, hot, but it's humid, but it was a lot of dry heat. So, we had to be really determined to kind of go through that, but it was really, really hot.
I'm from Seattle, and at 80 degrees, it's really hot. So
Yes.
It was really hot. I think it was over 105 when we were out there.
Wow.
Yes, it was 108 one of those days. They actually had heat advisory out. But
Yeah.
Common Power took real good care of us, made sure we were hydrated and had frequent stops. So, we made it through it.
Totally. Great. So you were part of Team Nevada, and that team was about 45 to 50 people in total, one of our larger teams. So how would you describe that just general kind of like experience? You come back from that and your friend says to you, what'd you do this weekend? Okay. And you're like, well, I was in Nevada. And they're like, what? All right. And so what's your kind of like 90-second description of that experience to somebody who isn't already familiar with this kind of body of work that you do? Jen, let's start with you. What's your experience? What's your kind of short description, elevator pitch description?
So I've told people that one of the really great things about traveling with Common Power is we have a plan that we execute. I mean, we had great team leaders. Jeffrey White, who was our team leader, is just amazing. All the young people who helped him were amazing. I've sent the picture of all 45 or 50 of us to so many friends. It was just a big multi-generational, multicultural, multiracial group that we were working together. And it was hot, but we had a really great experience with the candidates that
Hmm.
we were actually campaigning for. And so they came and spent a couple hours with us and explained what the demographics were of the neighborhood we were in and what some of the hot buttons were of the people we would be talking to, what the, hot issues were in the campaign. So it was super helpful. We felt very well
Hmm.
prepared to go out and just knock on doors looking for people who had primarily voted Democratic.
Okay. So you're there, multiracial, multi-generational. It's hot. You're knocking on doors for people that voted, and you went to Nevada for some reason to do this. All right, Sharnita, how about you?
I'm with Jen. It was definitely a well orchestrated trip. I share with people that I'm more pumped and I came back more excited
Okay.
about becoming a part, of the future at that time of the Biden Harris campaign. But it was just encouraging to be able to meet the different residents there, to talk with them and to really hear the things that they were concerned about. And that's what I was sharing with the people back home. We got to really get out there and find out what people are thinking, what they're feeling, and get them back engaged and more confident in democracy. And that's what I love that CP does. It really pushes the narrative of protecting our democracy.
Hmm. Okay. When you went out to knock on doors, did you go out by yourselves, or how does it work?
Well, we typically go out in car groups, and those groups change from day to day. That's what I love. You're not just with one particular group the entire time. So it builds community. I love that. So we're able to go out into the different areas canvassing, and you get a chance to see how those of different age spectrums actually tackle being able to talk to or canvass with
Mm, hmm. Hmm. Okay. Um, and I don't know because I haven't asked you specifically, but we sent our volunteers arrive on these trips from a couple different, um, like we'll call them avenues or portals. And so, Jen, just for the sake of kind of like hearing from people, did you pay your way to go on this trip, Jen?
I did. Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
you paid airfare, hotel,
Yep.
food, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And Sharnita, did we sponsor you and cover your costs as part of our funding of educators?
Yes, with educators that come through CP, we're well taken care of and are sponsored for those that want to go out and be boots on the ground to participate with these canvassing.
Okay, so this is kind of our two financial methods of people arriving out on trips with us. Some people are paying their way, and other people we're sponsoring, and we use our fundraising dollars to help sponsor people to go. It's usually we set a dollar amount of about $3,000 for someone to have airfare, hotel, food, rental cars. For about 4 days on the ground, and you get about 200 to 250 doors that you knock on in that span of time. So for everybody who supports us and helps to fund us as an organization, if you give your money to field work, that's where it's going. It's going to that and to pay for our staff. Now, Jen, you arrive here at Common Power as someone who has been both a donor, an advocate for us, and a worker for us. All right. You wear all three hats on them. So kind of like, could you just give us your impressions of this particular trip, maybe of each of those from each of those three doorways. So let's start with like from a donor, and then as an like an advocate or an ambassador for CP, and then as a worker.
Sure. So about the donor part, I didn't actually know that, the teachers who have joined us had an arrangement, and I could not be happier about that. Shanita and her cohort in the last year and a half have been just incredibly fun and valuable members of our team. So we go out in the field and we've got the young people who mostly are coming out of Action Academy, and they're a blast and we learn so much from them. But then a lot of us are retired. We've had our careers, and I think that we have missed people who are still actively engaged in their work life. And the work that the teachers are doing with the young people of America is so important. And I just have really appreciated everything that they have brought to the table on the trips that I've been on with them. So I could not be more excited about that. So we are so
Okay,
glad you're here, Shanita.
absolutely.
Thank
So we'll leave the advocate part out because this whole thing is advocate. How about from worker? And I want to ask both of you about this. What is the reason that you chose to do this? Like you spent at least 3-4 days doing this, and each of you has traveled before. Shanita, I know you've been at least in Pennsylvania with us, all right? And Jen, I know you've been at least in Virginia with us. So maybe you could tell us why you chose to do this. And I'll go to you first, Shanita, and then to Jen.
I chose to do it because I've always been an advocate for civil liberties, for citizenship. I love being able to not just be a talker, but a doer. As an educator, I teach my students to be engaged. And so I believe it's only fair that I model that type of behavior, and I've done that for decades. As you mentioned, last year, I got connected on the educator learning tours. I was just moved at how amazing CP was, how orchestrated, how organized. And then when I found out about the political spectrum, I was like, oh yeah, that's right up my alley. I was a clerk at a precinct for 8 years. So I knew it was time for me to get on the other side of it, to make a difference by getting out there and on, boots on the ground and helping. And that's what kind of drove me to be a part of this part.
And how would you say, from your teacher hat perspective, that you think educators who we are intentionally sponsoring to come into these trips, how do you think educators could like add something like a special ingredient to these trips?
I think as an educator, one, we are aware. We're more aware of a lot of things around us because we're constantly keeping up with current events and things to teach to our students. So, and because of that, that makes us kind of more bought into as stakeholders about society, because we're wanting to make sure that the environment that we're teaching children in is conducive for learning, not just be in our classroom, but outside of the classroom. So getting a chance, I love being able to come back and share pictures of where I've been. It sparks and it initiates some of the things that I do in my class. My students had their own voting. We voted all class officers specifically to give them that experience of learning why they need to be able to vote. And actually just took a group of kids to Selma and Montgomery, inspired by one of the learning tours that I went on, and they got a chance to talk with one of the foot soldiers. So I think it's important because it allows us to become better teachers with the things that we teach in our classroom pertaining to history.
That's incredible. I forgot. Yeah, you were just in Selma, right? Yes. At the building there with our partners. Awesome.
Yes, it was. They were really excited. They got a chance to meet Miss Jackie and Miss Lowry. That we went to the Foot Soldiers Park. They got a chance to walk across the bridge, and the parents were more engaged, or just
interesting.
Students were. So I think it was so important that the parents got a chance to experience that. And then we went to the legacy sites after that in Montgomery.
Quick aside on that. Did you get an Education to Action grant from the Institute to support that trip?
I actually did. And
okay.
The funds to help pay for the things on the trip, all the way down to the shirts that we had that everybody know these were the next gen foot soldiers that they were, engaged in their learning. So yes, the action grant really helped tremendously to make this happen.
Okay, that education to action grants are something that the Institute under Dr. Terry Ann Scott's leadership makes available to people who've been teachers who've come on our learning tour trips with us. They're available, they're up to $1,000 and people can use them to do different kinds of educational dimensions. And Sharnita, you got one and I'm glad to hear about it. So folks, that's another place that support goes to in this organization if you help to fund us. Jen, you could, like Sharnita, choose to be a lot of places rather than the 105 heat in Las Vegas, knocking doors. So what just what compels you, because this isn't the first time for either of you, what compels you to have done this?
I've told people, I mean, I've often quoted what we say around common power, which is that action is the antidote to despair. And, of course, now we're all feeling action is just a manifestation of everything else that we're feeling. But I went to a fundraiser on Wednesday night where the pretty new chair of the Washington Dems was there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things she talked about was a little bit of the history of Democrats kind of losing the plot about personal
Shasti
connection with.
Conrad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shout out to
Amazing.
Shasti.
Amazing. But, going back a couple decades, we started relying on technology a lot more, and that was very successful. But, people are shocked. You go out and knock on doors with people. And, I try to explain to them, by and large, I'm not going to random doors and asking them, are you going to vote for Kamala Harris? I know I'm looking for people who have historically voted Democrat. We're mostly getting out the vote. I have never in 9 or 10 canvassing trips had anybody ever be mean to me or threaten me or, I've had some people who are not of the same views that I am. And they may shut the door and say, no, thanks. And I'm like, when I talk to them and they tell me they're voting the other way, I say, if that seems to be the end of the conversation with them, I say, thank you. I come from a side that believes everybody should vote for thanks for being a good citizen. But, at its heart, and you guys have heard me say this before. I mean, I have a long career as a corporate lawyer, and moving into this stage of this great work of my life, I feel like I am expressing what it means to be a good citizen, what it means to get out and talk to other people, to share ideas. I think that's what people mostly used to do. One of the people I was traveling with in Nevada told me that it used to be on election night in his neighborhood, everybody came to one house, Republicans and Democrats. And he said, it's just very hard to do that now. And I just think it's important to look people in the eye and say, this really matters. Your vote really matters. Don't lose it. Think about what you're doing and use it effectively.
Awesome. We're joined, of course, by Charles here coming in. We're talking about the Nevada team experience. Let me put this piece on the table because Charles will have a lot to kind of contribute on this too. So we didn't just go out there in Team Nevada, as awesome as that team was, the diversity, the size, the scope, the heat. The Seattle Times sent along a reporter and a photographer as part of that experience to highlight the work of Common Power. And so I have been a reporter, and I know that like when you show up in the room, people take notice that there's a reporter there, and like you never know like what they're going to do and what photos they're going to take and so on and so on and so on. So do each of you have any kind of like salient memory or experience element that you remember from having that reporter and that photographer there, that just gives us a little bit of the view behind the curtain of the process of creating this awesome front page story? Sharnita, looks like you came off of mute for this one.
Yes, I recall them, a couple of times they asked us individually some questions. I could tell that they were amazed at the way the team was executing everything that we were doing on our day-to-day activities. And of course, I had the privilege of having them accompany me on a couple of those door knockings. So yeah, they were very present and engaged in what we were doing.
So when they went on the door knocking with you, where were they at? How did they handle that?
They kind of walked behind. They didn't, get out front. They were more in an observing manner. When I went up to this particular door and knocked on the door and did, the conversation piece that we usually do, they stood back and they listened. They listened to the resident that opened her door. And as you can see, her facial expression was really intuitive, like, what are you doing here? I've been kind of bombarded already with a lot of people and I hear you, but I'm considering going in a different direction. So, they were there to really observe and document the moment.
Uh-huh. Okay. Did they respect it? Did they respect the space and the dynamic?
They actually did. They listened to what she said. And as I shared the response to it, they also observed that as well. And then in that same space, then they asked a question themselves.
Oh, okay.
And it was pretty much, I guess, because of the fact that she, the way that she responded to me, and in the fact that she turned her conversation around after she heard what it was that I was sharing with her. So they were very considerate about that.
So
that part's in the article. The part about you talking to her and her changing her mind is in the article. And online, that image is the lead image actually of you talking to her, and her face at first was like, I don't know about this.
The conversation that went after that was pretty much that, because she basically said, she was concerned about, because of course we weren't just there to say, we want you to go and vote for this group or this type of thing. We were saying, hey, we're here supporting and of course it's Nevada. I learned that it's not Nevada, it's the Nevada Dems. And we want to know what are some concerns that you have that we can take back to those that are, vying for your vote. And she began to talk about the taxes and the housing and education. And then she said, but, we've all been trained to do what our parents taught us to do. And I'm not sure if I want to do that this time because I am concerned financially and I may be thinking and considering the other avenue. And of course, at that moment, my mind was like, oh no, I love this kind of challenge. So I said, okay. Now, which type of administration would you want in office that is not, because I recognize she was a person of color. I said, think about the opportunities and the times when we were not allowed to have houses in neighborhoods. I said, now you are able to own a house in the neighborhood of your choosing and allow your children to have education at the school of your choosing. If you get an administration that does not care about diversity, equity, or inclusion, or even concerned about your rights in a democratic manner, do you think they're going to be concerned about you and how you are paying your taxes or your economy? I said, now.
I love that.
And then she was like, huh. I didn't think about it that way. I said, yeah, because you want to make sure you not only have your house, but you're staying at certain rules can be applied and certain things and rights that fought for years could be dialed back. Yeah. We want to make you maintain that democracy. So after saying that, she was moved, and that's when the guy said, man, you're good. You're really good. Great debate.
So great.
Way to go, Shanita. Way to go. Oh, so the reporters and the photographer are watching all this. They take the photos and everything. Okay. Jen, how about you? Was there any kind of interactions or things you noticed about just having the news coverage there?
So I felt a little funny about having them there. As Shanita said, they stood back, but there's a guy with a big camera and another guy watching. And one thing that's really interesting about the door knocking in swing states is people are inundated. They, when you realize all these elections, these national elections, they come down to a couple 100,000 votes in a few states, and everybody knows who those voters are, and they are constantly contacted. So I wasn't really sure what the reaction was going to be. And when I had Maria with me, we went to the first door and rang the bell, and it was like an explosion of enthusiasm that came out. A woman said, "We are all Democrats. We have all voted. Everybody in my house has voted. We are so glad you're here." And I kind of took a step back because that doesn't always happen.
No, it
And
doesn't.
it does not always happen, to be fair. And she just wanted to talk for a while, but at this point it's hot. She's already voted. We've got to move on to the next house. So Dan and Nick asked if they could stay and talk to her some more. And I said, "Oh yeah, you
These are the
do it."
Seattle Times
The
people,
Seattle
right?
Times people.
Yeah.
So Marie and I moved on to the next house, and it's at some point, because it was so hot, a lot of people weren't actually answering the door, which is why they talked about my little ring speech. But the second guy was super enthusiastic, and I think that was the guy that also showed up in the story. It doesn't always happen for me like that. Let me just say, doesn't always happen for me like with Shanita's experience either. But he stayed and talked to the guy after we had left. The guy says, "Yes, we are definitely going to all vote for Democrats. We believe that's the way to do it." So we're like, "Great, got what I needed." And we were sort of being pleasant and moving on. But Dan and Nick stayed and talked to the voters some more, which I thought was super interesting.
Right, so they see at least these three interactions, yours, Shanita, and then these two that Jen has, and they're like, "Wow, these are amazing conversations that you all have at the doors."
You guys are miracle workers.
Yeah.
You're really effective. Look at this. Yeah. And if they would have come back the next day, it's like neither of them maybe talked to anybody,
Yeah,
just got lucky that day.
yeah.
Charles, what's it been like for you in your leadership to have the Seattle Times how did it happen? How did this come about and what's it been like?
The cool thing behind that is it actually comes from something that we prioritize, and that's relationships. And it came from sister district in the
Mm,
Bay Area in California.
mm,
We've collaborated with them off and on over years. When I was there a couple of years ago, I visited with one of the founders. She's actually from Seattle.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Huge Seahawks fan, secretly a Seahawks fan. I don't want to put her out there. Her name is Lala Wu, though. She's wonderful. She's wonderful. But she was contacted by them because she knows the reporter from
Hmm.
like her Seattle time, and she was like, you don't need sister district. You're looking for common power. Because he's like, I've heard about people traveling from Seattle to go and knock on doors all over the country. And I want to talk about this phenomenon, and I want to get with an organization that I think is doing it. She's like, that's not us. You want common power. And that's how that came about. And I think it initially was supposed to be a smaller story. And then where he learned about our community, the system of getting people through to volunteering, our relationships on the ground. And then he went and traveled and he saw this. I keep talking about it like this, but it felt like it to me when you walked into that room that first day. And Jen and Shanita, you can see, tell me if I'm wrong here, but it was like a miracle. Like you walk in and you look at who's in that room, and
mhm.
you've done this work before, and this isn't your first time knocking on doors, and you got like I walked in, I was like, this is a beautiful room. If
Mm.
all we did was get this group of people together, then we've won. This is amazing. We had people from all over the country, all different ages and races, and they were all there for the same reason. If we were making shoes, it would have still been the most awesome shoemaking team that I've ever seen and anyone's ever seen. Um, Add to that, we were working to save democracy. It was beautiful. And I think he saw that and he was like, there's much more to this story. This gotta be bigger. What else you got, David?
Well,
How's the
what else you
podcast?
got, Shanita and Jen? I know that I respect the heck out of both of you. So I would just love to hear kind of like your what like uh what do you what would you add to our understanding of why the Seattle Times would pick Common Power
Hmm.
to tell this story through? Because they were at Sister District, and that's kind of la la woo to suggest to drive them to us. But Sister District doesn't do exactly what we do. No, but they could have just hoarded that story. They could have. They could have said, "Oh yeah, let us convince you to do this about us." But no, she was generous and sent it our way, and I appreciate that. But Sharnito and Jen, both of you have made choices as citizens, as people in our society, to devote some of your time and your treasure with Common Power, with us, Common Power. And so, like, what is it? What is it that has drawn you into this space that leads the Seattle Times to want to give us this kind of space?
Well, for me, and I guess it would have been the same thing that you hear echoed by many of us that are a part of CP. You become family, and you can do a lot united than you can divided. I love the way that that's talked and that's embraced, even down to talking about in our debriefs of considering the things that we have gone through or listened to. We get to share the stories, and we find out that we have commonalities with that. So the being them being able to watch us in that space of not only are they out there, they're getting up, they're getting prepared, they're getting pumped, they are getting very much educated about what they have to do, to get this work done. But then they're going out in this heat, triple digit heat. There was a couple of times that they're saying, did you want water? Do you want to cool down? And we were just so in our zone because all we could think about is our democracy was at stake. So I think it's them being able to see us in that environment at that time, that they want. Hey, I need to know more about these people. I need to know more about this organization, because we are not a common organization. We are not common at all with what we're doing, because we're out there literally making a difference. They got a chance to see us making a difference, and that's what I believe they wanted to hear more of.
And just could you say a little bit about yourself, the professional work you do, Sharnita, and where you live?
I am an educator. I've been in education for over 3 decades, K-12 setting. I've done a lot. My love for civil liberties came from being in the junior NAACP in the 70s. Finding out about history at that time made me, through the years, stand up for and be a voice for a lot of people to get laws passed. I wasn't popular in those spaces most of the time, but it was just to hold them to the law and hold them accountable for what people were afforded. I do a lot of things in the community. I have a nonprofit that I try to connect with other nonprofits to make sure that our youth get every opportunity afforded to them. So I mean, this is just an extension. Me being involved in the election process has always been ongoing. I've been just as much of a part of that as I have with education. So like I said, connecting with CP, when my principal first brought this to me, and I'm like, let me look at, because as an educator, I'm a researcher. So immediately I went online to look, and I was like, whoa, yes, I'll go. When can I go? So I just love the the values and the mission of this organization. So yeah, I'm y'all stuck with me. I'm not going anywhere. Y'all stuck with me.
Your heart is amazing, Sharnita. We're so fortunate. Jen, what are your thoughts?
So in 2019, end of 2019, as we were working our way through the Trump administration, the first and last, I asked a friend of mine who was politically connected here in Seattle. I said, I'm just tired of writing checks and not, I need to do something. And I asked her who she knew was doing something, and we came to our first workshop that you all had run. And I've told him this, and when I saw Charles speak, I said, I want him to be my CEO. It was just so inspiring. Larcy was expecting September, and so that first year, that first summer when we weren't in the field, I did a lot of phone banking, which is not, for me, is not as rewarding as actually face-to-face contact with voters. So I did my first field work in 2021. And, it's funny, after this article came out yesterday, people who I were on in those very early trips have pinged me. And, it's also true. You come for the work and stay for the people. I mean, I've made so many friends and been
right.
with people I just wouldn't have otherwise been
Mhm.
with, which
Yeah.
I treasure that experience, the learning about it, the being in the work together is just so impactful and meaningful to me. And the work matters so much. So, I look at what other people are doing in their retirement and I think, well, I could be doing that, or I could be doing something that I think is the most important thing I can be doing right now. So I'm just really grateful. And, one thing I would say about your specific question about the Times picking this up, it's somebody asked me yesterday, are there other groups doing what Common Power is? And I said no, and I'm a little surprised about that. And
Mm.
as people have asked me, should I get involved with Common Power? It's been fascinating to me to see, 250,000 people have volunteered to work with the Democrats now. And I wonder if they have the infrastructure to effectively
Mm.
deploy those. And I've told people, it's one of the many things that's so great about Common Power is we've been through this a lot now. And what I have seen in terms of the standardization, the plans we have, the way we communicate, these are the days we're going, this is where we're staying, here's some information about the campaign. I tell people this is totally plug and play. You
Mhm.
don't have to be an expert at anything. I am more introverted and more shy than people think
Mm.
I am. And yet I don't find it difficult to knock on the door and look somebody in the eye and say, this is why I'm here and this is why I think it's important. Can I have a few minutes of your time? So I feel awkward and embarrassed when people say, oh, you're doing such a great thing. I'm doing something that's super important to me. It's important to me. It's important to my family. And I believe it's important for future generations. So what better way to be spending my time? And it's good to do it with people that I like and enjoy. So
Mhm.
thanks you all for making it possible.
Yeah.
We're an
Jen,
Go ahead, Shanita.
I was and to what Jen is saying, you fall in love with what the CP values are. And for me, even a couple of the trips I've gone on, for educators, anybody that know anything about education, we have certain number of days. Unfortunately, I'm at a private school, so we don't get as many of those days as the public school system does. So if you're missing or you're out, and you don't have PTO, that's just a day docked, And so one of the trips, I did not care. It was more important for me to do the work than I
Mhm.
feel to have stayed behind and not got a chance to participate when I went out to Philadelphia. It was more rewarding, the stories, the people, the experience to canvas outside of my city, outside of my state. And it felt like really that type of connection that during the civil rights movement, when those from the East came down to the South to help register voters, to help people to mobilize, to help boots on the ground, willing to give their lives for democracy, for a better cause. And that's what I feel like we are, especially when we get a chance to sit at the feet of foot soldiers, that share their, and Common Power does that. They have we, not y'all, we have a
That's
beautiful
right. That's
relationship.
right.
No longer y'all, it's we. A beautiful relationship with the foot soldiers to listen to what they went through and to find us, typically in a similar fashion dealing with the possibility of democracy being challenged. Again, I think it's so important that we have to sacrifice. And that was, I'm willing to do that type of sacrifice with CP to make sure that our America is a united America and we retain democracy and not a dictatorship.
One
Shout
of the
out to shout out to one of the foot soldiers real quick from Florida that we've met and we work with, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, right? Also from Florida.
Yes.
one of
Charles,
the
can you, oh, sorry, Jen, go ahead. And then Charles, can you
j- j-
close us up with some of your thoughts, Charles?
just real briefly, y- um, Shanita, I don't know what it's like where you live. I have seen the reports of the 500 golf cart caravan through the villages for Kamala, which I find thrilling. But, for me in a very blue area, I have struggled to understand. I have struggled a lot to understand. I think I told y'all that I've driven through Michigan in the last couple weeks, and there are parts of it that are very, very Trumpy. And I'm trying to understand how people that I've lived with and people that I've worked with, where they're coming from, the effort to actually understand why we're so polarized. And I have found these trips to swing states really enlightening about
Yeah.
what's happening in my country. What people are thinking, what they're being told, what their neighbors are saying. I don't experience that much in Seattle. So I have found that to be a really valuable part of the visits that we've gone into, as you said, Shanita, to different parts, different areas. It's just really enlightening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting here. Of course, this is the last election. Trump came here 4 times. So we do have a large range of views here. But like I said, we're going to push through it. We believe in the democracy that we are living in now. We're going to make sure we hold on to it. So that's my goal, even here.
That's right.
Especially as we getting ready to go out to Texas. Yes,
That's right.
and hosting a drive on August the 6th, a voter registration drive. So there are other things you end up spending and doing in your own neighborhoods.
I love that. That point about feeling more connected to why and how we got here as a country by going out and talking to people. The point I would add to that is you also understand that we're not as far apart as the media would have us believe, or as we feel sometimes when we're kind of in our bubbles or just talking to people that we know. Not only are the people who vote different than us not so hostile towards us, they're also easier to sway than we think. And what they want and need is very similar to what we want and need. The other thing is, and it's connected to that point, which is, to the stories that are in the Seattle Times article and yours specifically, Shanita, where you convinced this person to think about voting. It's actually easier for us to win than people believe. And these conversations prove that out. So, I say this a lot to folks, and this is actually why I go, because I could run this organization and not ever hit a door. But I understand, and one, not asking anyone to do anything that you wouldn't do. And two, I need that for myself because I also want to answer that question of why are we so far apart and how do we get closer together?
Yeah.
What is driving this? And I want to cut through the noise. And there's so much noise online and on television.
Yeah.
The truth is on these doors. So, if you don't believe that Kamala's going to win, or if you don't believe that going out there makes a difference, invest in your own mental health and go out there to renew hope for yourself. If it's just about you, then cool, join us on these doors so that you feel better about this country and you get a little bit of exercise in. Okay. And then the food is great too, the food and the wine and the friends, and
Trips to
do it
Target.
that's right. Do it for selfish reasons, do it for selfish reasons. Yeah, come on. And it's more than was in the article. Let me just say that. The article was a slice of CP, But you go to that website and you see those pictures, those are actual people who have gone out with this organization to knock on doors. You look at on the about page and you see our staff, those are the people who make decisions on what we do in this country. And when you go out on the ground, the teams that you knock on doors with look like the America that we hope to build together.
Yeah.
So that the article was just a preview and it was a slice of CP. The rest of us, we are. You think the article was great. If you're listening to this, the rest of CP is amazing. It is amazing.
Hey, thank you all so much for joining this podcast on July 30th, 2024. It is 97 days, I believe, or 98 days until Election Day. And we're committed to doing everything we can every day through that. 100 days to change the world, right? 100 days is what we've got essentially. So Shanita, Jen, thanks so much. Charles, your great leadership. Thanks everybody for joining us for this podcast. We'll see you all tomorrow.
All right.
All right, y'all.
We'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank y'all.
Bye.